Welcome back to Gruber Motor Company. I'm Pete Gruber.
I'm Mark Schaffner. Good morning to welcome to the Gruber Morning Show.
So you're probably curious, are we in a starship today? Our green screen behind us here is actually rendering an artificial intelligence image. And we're toying with that. If you remember, those of you that have been with us for a while, they used to be Pete's personal pictures from decades of photography, the ones that I was most proud of. But you know what? I'm really proud of some of these AI-generated images. I would never have been able to take one like this because nothing like this really exists that I could have gone to take a picture of, except in Hollywood, of course.
Right. I mean, there's a few things that this can remind me of. You got the Avengers flying ship. You have Wakanda again with Marvel. You have maybe Star Trek Enterprise. Love the picture.
And it's always a surprise, guys. It's all about prompts. And there's a whole profession emerging now called prompt engineers. These are people that actually are talented enough to put the words together to create a visual image. In this particular case, I put in engineering lab, futuristic, highly detailed, brightly lit, and this is what I came up with. So enjoy. We'll play with this a bit, and depending on the theme at each podcast, we'll try to match it to the theme. Since we're high-tech and futuristic, this one is fitting today.
Now, we want to start by welcoming our TikTok audience. Starting today, our TikTok audience is seeing the background image. They are hearing our sound through the same system that our other platforms are going through.
Guys, real quick, we are actually having some issues. We're working on it right now for the TikTok people. If you can hear me, just bear with us.
Okay.
Got some duplicate audio, but we'll fix it.
A little duplicate audio, but we're hoping you can see the screen behind us. And again, our commitment is to improve the production quality for all of our streaming platforms. Understand that we have Instagram back on today, too. Is that right, guys? Correct? Okay.
Yes, Instagram is seeing a green screen at this point, but we do have them back on, which is progress from what we've had in the past.
Okay. So be patient with us. It's improving all the time. We're doing the best we can.
Maybe, Pete, we should get started with following up on the 3 questions that we left off on our last podcast last Thursday.
Fair enough.
Our first one was from Alex on YouTube. He said, what tips do you have about towing an EV to charge a dead battery using the regen feature? Tesla says not to flat tow a Model 3 behind an RV for road trips. I just find that odd.
You know, we talked about that a bit before this session, and you have, of course, in any electric vehicle, regenerative braking, which scavenges energy from the rotational mass on the wheels and charges the battery, unless you're, of course, feeding the drive motor. And that's one of the principles of a 3-phase AC induction motor is you're able to do that. We're fairly certain, and of course we can't corroborate this, at least in this session, that the regen braking shuts down when the car is off or when it's not functioning. And that would make sense because, like Mark pointed out, well, how are you going to do cooling? How is the firmware going to collect telemetry from the various parts of the car if it's shut off?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And, my advice is you just don't do it because you don't know what's happening to your car at that point.
Right.
It could be that the car sits in neutral and is fine. It could also be that car, it's not like a Jeep where you can just, drop your drive shaft and off you go.
Yeah.
You don't even have a transmission to drop. Everything is going through that electric motor. So at best, you're heating up the electric motor with a whole lot of friction and stuff coming from the road. At worst, you're overheating and overcharging your battery because those charge rates on regen are not that unlike the charge that you dissipate when you're using your energy. So you could be putting 300 watt hours per mile into that car. Within 10 miles, you could have, 3 or 4 kilowatts worth of energy put into that battery. That's a really high rate of charge. And then, like I told you before the podcast, you've got cooling issues because your car's not on, and so on and so forth. Or we have the whole Pikes Peak story, like we had with the T0. You could boil your battery just with lithium-ion battery, it doesn't boil. It becomes a Roman candle.
Right. So yeah, with the safety system shut off, we can't imagine that you would be able to charge a main propulsion battery in an EV by using the regen option by towing it or pushing it, for that matter.
Yeah, it's not a safe thing to do. I'm sure that you can find on YouTube where people have done it on occasion, but it's not something I would ever recommend. Second question came from Crunch de Grace Hopper, again on YouTube, and this user had said, per Kim Java's advice to use Tesla buyers, I ran the 24-hour service battery test on my Tesla Model Y long range to recalibrate it, but I couldn't find any report other than healthy. So what gives? Now, on this one, neither Pete nor I were very familiar with this because, first, we're not doing a lot with Model Ys at this point, nor are we doing very much with Model 3s. We tend to work with the older cars, Model S's, and especially with Roadsters. So I did a little bit of looking up and found and learned that the 2022.36.2 firmware release, which was released somewhere around October, November of last year, has a new feature on it. That feature is called battery test. You have to go into service mode in order to get to that feature, though. So it's meant for Tesla technicians to be able to do a test on the battery itself. The way that the test works, it takes about 24 hours. You have to start off at less than 50% state of charge, and you have to be plugged into a level 2 charger. It's going to turn on its systems, discharge the battery all the way to 0%. Obviously, will dissipate a lot of heat from the car in the process. We'll let it settle at 0. Then we'll charge the battery all the way up to 100%. And that's regardless of what kind of charge limits that you might have. At the end of that, it'll take a reading of how many kilowatts of energy it put into the battery, compare it to the battery's capacity, and give you a percentage. So a new battery technically would come up at 100% because if you had an 80 kilowatt battery, it charged to 80 kilowatts, then you're good to go. If it was an 80 kilowatt battery and charged to 72 kilowatts, it'd come back and say your battery is healthy and at 90%. I think this is what Kim was asking about when she said the battery just came back as healthy.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately for me, because I'm not familiar with the process either, I don't know why your battery just came back and said healthy and didn't give you a percentage. I think this is an intriguing piece of technology, and for those Model Y and Model 3 and Model S owners that have the latest software, I could see this being akin to the CAC values that have become really popular on the Roadster batteries as a way to demonstrate the health of your battery when you go to sell your car.
Sure. And let's explain that for a moment. In the Roadster world, when people were selling Tesla Roadsters, they would take great pictures and they would tell you what it charged to in standard mode, which is about 80% charge, 83% or so. And finally, people began to realize there is another metric that's available in the Tesla Roadster through the password-protected portal that used to only be available to Tesla service technicians.
Mm-hmm.
I digress for a moment here. In 2014 or so, we finally decided, enough. The owners own their cars. The Tesla service centers can get into this. Why can't an owner? And of course, the concern back then was, well, what if they do something to break it? Well, there's nothing you can do to break the Roadster, if you get into that password-protected area.
Right.
In that area, there is a parameter called calculated amp hour capacity, which is an algorithm that collects data about your battery use. It's slightly affected by charging techniques and all that, but in general, it is a metric that is derived that will give you a numerical component. And usually a successful or a good battery in a Tesla Roadster is in the neighborhood of 150 CAC, even as high as 155. They were 157, 158 when they were new, down to even 100 into the teens, 117, 115, 110. It doesn't necessarily, if you go lower than that, mean that your battery is quickly going to die because we have customers that are at the 100 units
Sure.
CAC range or even slightly below, but they're still, they're still able to charge. So anyway, that's the calculated amp hour capacity or the CAC value in a Roadster. And I find it humorous that these days the other auctions that are selling Roadsters are checking with us. We have a newsletter that tells you how to derive your CAC, including that secret password that you need in order to access the previously unavailable portions of a Tesla Roadster. And they're now posting those, and people are becoming quite savvy that this is an important metric to consider when you're buying a Tesla Roadster. So it would be nice if Tesla used something like this for their later generation cars, because there's a lot of concern about buying used EVs, and the battery, of course, is the biggest one because it's a major expense. As we've said many times, in an ICE engine, you distribute your costs in that vehicle across a number of components. The engine, for example, the transmission, so in an EV, you have a couple of main things: drivetrain and battery, and those are the big ones. And a battery could cost you $22,000 for a $30,000 car. It would be nice if Tesla made available a quality metric that you could extract from your battery prior to making a used EV purchase.
Yes, by all means it could. And I think that this tool is something that's going to get us a step closer to that, possibly a big step closer to that. While I don't think it's going to necessarily be quite the technical detail of what a CAC would give, it's certainly a good start.
Sure.
So we have one other question that we got that we had not answered on Thursday. And this particular question, which came from Supacat on YouTube, is it safe to trickle charge an older 2012 to 2016 Model S to 100% every once in a while?
When we say trickle charge, I'm assuming this is not an external trickle into the battery, which is something that we do at the service level in order to recover brick battery packs. When we're talking about trickle charging, I'm assuming that this is a normal charge process using level 1, level 2 chargers, or even a supercharger.
Well, and I think the reference in this case would be that they're using a 110 volt charger plugged into a wall outlet, charging at 15 amps.
Okay. Once in a while is fine. It's like everything in life. It's about moderation, is it not?
Yes, it is, by all means. And of the charging methods for your older Tesla, occasionally plugging in that 110 cord and letting it go for its 12 to 24 hours to charge is actually probably kind of good for that battery. It helps to the battery to come up to a state of charge without having to encounter the heat.
Mm-hmm.
So in my experience, having driven a 2012 for a long time, I liked doing that on occasion. It, of all things, it seemed to bump up my range by a mile or two for a couple of weeks.
Mm-hmm. It looks like we've got a bunch of questions streaming in here. By the way, for those of you that are joining us every session now, watch Rich Rebuild's channel. He contacted us, and he introduced himself, and his name is George. So, George, if you don't mind, we'll refer to you as George from now on. He says good morning. And by the way, thank you for giving us some contact information for Rich. I reached out to him this morning, and we're excited about getting Rich Benoit on our podcast. We have a lot in common that we can talk about.
By all means.
Real quick, guys, I'm going to turn on the AC. It's a little warm. Let me know if you hear it through the headphones, though, or through the mics.
All right.
Okay,
All right,
we'll do that. And George, don't worry. We will at least occasionally refer to your username, which is Watch Rich Rebuild's channel. I know you did that on purpose. Good morning, though. I'm glad to have you here.
And by the way, the AC, it's getting 100. We're into triple digits in Phoenix now, and we're doing the best we can to stay cool. So, yeah 85.
85
all right. Well,
already.
it's all these lights are heating us up. I'm not hearing too much noise. I hear a little bit of a hum. If any of our users are unable to hear us, I think we're going to be okay, Jesse.
I think we'll be fine. So More Light Jam says, hello, everyone on YouTube.
Welcome from YouTube.
Good morning. And then Eric Orsetti, also from YouTube. Hello, everyone. And hello, Eric. Glad to have you on the show this morning.
TEPCO Cycle Repair on YouTube asks, wonder if you guys can work on Energica batteries. Good morning from TEPCO Cycle Repair. I'm unfamiliar with that brand, but you know, the simple answer is we're not able to take any other types of brands other than Tesla at this point. We're just buried with it. Early in 2014, when we didn't have as much Tesla business, we used to repair lots of EVs, from the Chevys to the Ford Fusions to
Right.
the even the hybrids like the Priuses. Um, these days, we're very busy with just taking care of Tesla Roadsters and then trying to squeeze in the later platform cars, which also need some help from time to time.
By all means, and the Model S's are starting to tick up, and we're trying to figure out ways to work through our list on that as well. TEPCO, right, Recycle Cycle Repair did say later, Energica is the bike manufacturer for the Moto e-bikes in MotoGP.
Oh, very cool.
So
Okay.
that is very cool. I don't know that we are able to take that on as of yet, though. On TikTok, Panopticon asks us, can you recommend a shop in Los Angeles?
We could ask this constantly about other shops like ours. What we're going to do, and we bounced this around a bit more this morning, I think it makes sense for us to create a list of shops that we're aware of that can work on EVs. There are going to be some caveats, though.
Yeah.
These are not endorsements. I think you phrased it properly.
Yeah, we're not gonna be in partnership with these shops. These are just gonna be places that we are aware of that exist. So we really don't have any guarantees or warranties about them.
Mhm.
But the EV marketplace is still so new that I think it makes a lot of sense for us to put together a list like that, because we do become kind of a clearinghouse of that information.
And this list, of course, will be from our customer feedback. So again, that's the primary caveat. We're not in partnership. We have not reviewed their service procedures, but endorsements and testimonials from customers is probably a good measurement as to whether these shops are real or not. So look for
Yeah.
that on our website. We'll be bringing something like that online here fairly soon. And for those of you that can't come to Phoenix, Arizona to have us work our magic, we'll give you some other options, hopefully in your territory.
On YouTube, EV Fan says, interesting. Never heard of Energica. I'm looking forward to Amprius, the Sandy Monroe visited recently.
Yeah, so are we. There's so many new battery technologies emerging that have fascinating specifications. And of course, the rush to find applications for them will begin to eventually migrate into some of these other types of products.
By all means. Daniel Hull on YouTube has asked us, Electra with QNX AI for battery management. Is that an option? I don't know myself.
Yeah. If we're saying that battery management can be done with AI, that's probably a correct statement. Yeah. If it's already being done, if you think about it,
Yeah, if it's already being done to a certain extent. That's one that I'm going to ask if Richard can kind of save that off so that we can research it, and we'll try to get back on that one on Thursday and see what else we can find about that. There's so much interesting information that comes from you guys who are listening to the podcast.
And it looks like TikTok, Panopticon says, service mode is awesome. So apparently he's used it. And yeah, we'd love to get more information on that as well. And we're just happy that our TikTok audience is able to see the production quality has improved. Better sound, better backdrop, and we're going to continue to improve that for you guys.
Yes, by all means. On YouTube, Niles from the Bion Danish Genome Institute is here. Good morning. He says, could you expand on why you think the sodium battery density will eventually equal lithium battery density? Sodium ions are much larger than lithium ions, so density should be lower. No?
Niles, you would be the one that would understand this and have a good handle on this. I did not realize that the ions are larger, physically larger.
Well, I know that with lithium being the third lightest element after hydrogen and helium, that its ions are in chemical structure the smallest of all of the ions of the metal salts, of which lithium and sodium are two of them. I am not versed enough yet in chemistry and the engineering side to be able to truly understand all of that at the level that Niles probably does. He does make a good point. At the same time, I'm not going to discount the idea that we may have other technologies or blended technologies that could end up with higher energy density. One of the things that I read this week was that there are some researchers that have found ways to potentially put silicone in as the anode instead of graphite, and there is close to 10 times the energy density with silicone. It may be that it's the other elements and not just the sodium or lithium that make it possible to have higher energy densities, where perhaps the lithium-based electrolyte doesn't work where a sodium-based electrolyte would. And so while the ions are larger on sodium, meaning lower energy density, the other materials maybe will compensate for that, and the net result will be higher energy density.
Of course, we have a number of conflicting, issues with batteries. We're trying to get them safer and at the same time more energy dense, and sometimes that's a difficult challenge.
Oh, that's a huge challenge. So, so having said all of that, I will admit though, I'm not a chemist. I'm not an engineer by trade.
But it's fun watching it evolve, isn't it?
It's so fun. It's
Yeah.
fun reading about it. It's fun learning about it.
Instagram, Ian Caldwell. Welcome back, Ian. Hey guys, any update on the container roadsters? Yeah, I guess there would be. We got more pictures last week. So for those of you interested in those 3 0-mile roadsters, there are a lot more pictures. They're not high quality pictures, mind you. We've got cell phones and inside a sea container and
some
with
video
limited
too.
room videos. That's right, 3 videos of them as well. And they're not highly produced videos, but at least it shows you some angles on the car. The highest bid right now is $750,000, so about $250K per car. And the sellers now do have a deadline on the bids. And I don't know, can we bring that up? I think it's within a week.
I think it was May 26th, if I remember right. Keep going on that.
Yeah, it's at the bottom there.
Yeah, May 26th.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's notable that they learned that all 3 roadsters are sport roadsters when they were there and saw them.
That was a change. We thought one of them was a base roadster, but all 3 of them now are sport roadsters.
And I'm trying to think what else we had learned. The better quality pictures, of course, were very notable, and just still looking forward to seeing what happens and whether or not these will end up shipping from China directly to a buyer, or whether or not they're going to land here in the U.S. with us first.
And if they come here, we're pretty excited about the fact that we can actually work on roadsters that have never been that have never gone into ownership. Oh, by the way, one other thing with these pictures is we now have 3 MCOs, Manufacturer Certificate of Origin. There was a lot of suspicion and speculation, and the naysayers were coming out. Well, what if it doesn't have the right paperwork? Then customs is going to impound them, and then you can wait for 3 months, and oh my God, it just went crazy, right, with speculation. There are MCOs, and there are also some tax advantages.
Yes, on the MCO, the tax advantages are namely that there's going to be a price on that MCO if you decide to register it here in the United States, assuming it's a U.S. buyer. The United States, at least here in Arizona, Department of Motor Vehicles is going to take a look at whatever price is on that MCO, and the buyer would pay their sales tax to the state based on the price that's on the MCO. Well, your price for Tesla Roadster Sport would be somewhere between 120 and 140,000. We know that the bids are already up to 250,000, so somebody's not going to have to pay full sales tax, and that's only if they register it. If they don't register with the state, we believe that there is at least a chance that they would have just a simple private party transaction with no sales tax involved at all.
And if this truly becomes a Picasso on the wall somewhere that you're never going to title and drive in the state where you live, I can't see any tax issue at all.
Yeah, I don't think I would see any tax issue either. Just the fact that you've got 3 Elon Musk signed MCOs is going to have some people saying, yeah, I don't think I want to title this just because I want to keep the signature.
Yeah, they have to surrender those.
Typically, you have to surrender them. We had one car come through our Tesla Roadster sale service, where they were able to somehow keep the original MCO with the Elon Musk signature, and so it had the title as well as that certificate of origin.
And it probably had something to do with a high quality color copier, and someone at the DMV blinked and didn't realize it was not the original. That would be my suspicion.
That would be my suspicion as well. Yep. On YouTube, George from the Watch Rich Rebuilds channel, he said, talking about towing a Tesla behind an RV, maybe Elon will make an RV tow mode option in the near future if he hears about the RV tow issue. It could be an option like camping, pet, or jack mode, etc.
Sure. Any of these manufacturers, if there's enough demand, they will insert that into the product.
You know, and that is an excellent point that you make too, George, that it's just a software setting. We already know when the battery charges to 100% that regen simply turns itself off.
Mm-hmm.
So they could keep it regen simply turned off and have the car as a free rolling, and that would not be a problem.
Right. YouTube, Paul Houlihan. Welcome, Paul. He says, I bought a 2014 Model S. The previous owner did a factory reset and battery capacity dropped to 37%. Tesla says it needs a new HV battery. Is there an easier fix? Well, this is a hotly debated issue currently. These early Model S batteries oftentimes are coming up with an error, the BMS 029 error. Mm-hmm. And it is a hotly debated issue right now, and we really don't have any official statement from Tesla at this point in time.
No, we don't have anything official as of yet. We have heard that things like factory resets or sometimes software updates to the latest version of the software or the firmware for the car can reset a test timer that for some reason is not regularly firing. I don't know a lot of information about it, but what I do know is that these battery capacity surprises are nasty surprises for the drivers.
Yeah, they are. TikTok, Scorpio King says, I only saw a matte green Tesla. Is that a one of? Not sure. The three roadsters we're talking about are radiant red and two very orange. Maybe you can elaborate, Scorpio King.
Well, I'm wondering too if he may have seen a Tesla that has been wrapped. You know, at one point we bought a satin green Tesla from this was back in 2017. It was we were very excited about it. It was a P100D with the ludicrous mode, and we got it at auction. It had some water damage from, I think it was Hurricane Harvey in Texas. And then when we got it here, we found out that some water damage was actually water up to the windowsills, and it was salt water. So there had been a lot of shorting that went on in the electronics.
The lesson there, guys, is you can buy Teslas at auction. You can buy flood damaged cars, and your competition is limited because most of the paint and body shops are terrified of any electronics problems. But you're going to have winners and losers, and sometimes they both outweigh each other. So we bought 22 of them that year, I think.
Yeah, we bought a lot of them that year, and several of them turned out wonderful. We had more than one that I can think of that literally we drove off the transport and spent a day or two, cleaning and disinfecting the interior cabin, and it was good to go.
They had dried up enough during transport to where they were operational again.
Yeah, that was amazing. So I think we were net winners on that, actually.
Were you? Okay.
I think so. On TikTok, Benner PI, statistics regarding EVs versus gas-powered to Dale's floor. Same range and carbon footprint of each?
Not following that one.
I'm not following that one really closely, and that it's the Dale's floor comment that I don't really understand. So if you'd like to comment again and help expand on that particular one, we'd love to be able to answer your question.
Instagram and TikTok, Westby. He says, good afternoon from the Netherlands. Well, thank you for joining us.
Good afternoon, and glad to have you here on Instagram.
It's got to be late for you guys, yes. TikTok, Panopticon. He says, I use the one EV fix in Costa Mesa, still too far. Oh, Costa Mesa, California. Okay.
Sure. Well, yeah, Costa Mesa is what, about halfway between Los Angeles and San Diego, if I remember right.
Mm-hmm.
So that could be, if you're up in the Los Angeles metro area, that still could be quite a drive. Instagram, Ewan Caldwell again. What does your team think? Do they think they can revive the batteries? I think this might be regarding that 37%.
Yeah, that 37% problem. What we're very good at is isolating resistive cells in the Roadsters and also the Model S's, and oftentimes it's just one cell, or repairing the electronics inside the battery pack. I think in order to determine what's going on with that car, we would need to run some diagnostics on it, and unfortunately, we don't have a remote method of doing that. But yes, there's a very good chance that we can repair that battery. We do that all the time, actually.
On YouTube, George again from the Niles from the Bion Danish Genome Institute. He tells us that Jordan Giesage, you tell me. Giesage?
Gesige is the European way, or the Danish way of saying that.
He would know, and so Niles is talking about the energy density of different battery chemistries. He normally speaks about the battery present and near future in great detail, but he will like to be interviewed about what will happen in 5 or 10 years or more. Sounds like a potentially great person to put on the podcast.
You bet.
We'll definitely try to reach out to him.
Instagram, Alia Ma 4950 says hello from Pakistan. Welcome.
Welcome.
We ask our audience to tell us where you're from, and we're always fascinated by the various parts of the globe that we're able to reach with a podcast like this. So that's always fun for us as well. And thank you for joining us. YouTube, Daniel Hull. I must get back to work. Have a good day. Thanks. I appreciate it. Here comes somebody that's been here before. YouTube, Trucker Alistair. Welcome back. He says, good morning, guys. Today, greetings from Alabama. Did you guys place bets on me today? Wonder who won. Well, we probably have some news items we should go through.
Yes.
On Twitter, yesterday, actually, there was a picture of a bunch of Tesla Roadsters sitting out behind a service facility, and it didn't say which one it was, but we surmise that it might be California based on some of the buildings. But the suspicion was that, my God, look at all these parts Roadsters. And I just wanted to go on record again that Tesla does store vehicles outside at times. It doesn't mean that they are defunct vehicles, out-of-commission vehicles, parts vehicles. It just means that they're waiting for some, service resolution. Of course, Roadster owners would typically prefer to have their cars left inside because a Roadster is not exactly waterproof. The charge port door doesn't like getting water in it, and the HVAC controller underneath the hood vanes. But the posting was taken down within about a half an hour or so after being posted. They had referenced us and said, well, you guys should check out Gruber Motor Company. And it was taken down, so I suspect that it was probably an incorrect posting. But the point here being is just because you see the cars out and back of a service center doesn't mean that they're available for sale, being parted out. They're probably customer cars being repaired. The ones that are being parted out, and I freely admit that Tesla does buy Tesla Roadsters for parts. Mm-hmm. They usually will have a bunch of things missing: fenders, front clips, tops. Wheels, tires, that type of thing. So these particular ones were way too much intact to be parts cars. So YouTube, here we go. He is correcting us on the pronunciation of the gentleman that he gave us a name for.
Yes,
and,
so it's going to be Jordan Gesige.
Gesige, okay. Geeseegee. Well, Niles, we're going to look him up, and that would definitely be a wonderful podcast guest, somebody that is thinking about the future.
Thank you. Trucker Alistair, again on YouTube, he says, the Fully Charged podcast released a video of an EV plane. similar looking to a Spitfire and P-51 Mustang. It broke the speed record for EV planes with 345 miles an hour.
That is incredible.
That is, I've heard it's only recently that there were batteries that were energy dense enough to be able to run a plane with.
Mhm.
I'm gonna have to look up that video. That sounds really fascinating.
Instagram, Ian Caldwell asks, with our contacts at Tesla, have you heard anything regarding the new Tesla Roadster? Tesla's really quiet about that. And I don't know whether that's good news or bad news.
I don't know. I tend to think the early announcement was put out to help drum up support, drive sales of the Model 3, keep interest high in Tesla, not necessarily meant as here's our hard deadline, we're going to do this and it's done. But also, I think that there were a lot of good intentions behind. We're going to put a Roadster out there and it's going to be in 2022 or 2023. And now the lack of hearing anything doesn't mean they're not working on it. I think it just means that they realize that this is not quite as easy as they thought it would be.
I think you're right. It's easy to assume that something nefarious might be going on, but it's all well intentioned.
Yeah.
I think they miscalculated, the time that they could get this product out. And after all, it is a niche car. And look at the strong demand for their mainstream vehicles. That's Cybertruck. There are over
yeah.
1 million people waiting for that. And then, of course, the semis. Remember, this is going to make a huge difference on the planet. So there are times when Tesla overcommits and underdelivers, and I would say this new Roadster is definitely one of those.
I think so, but I mean, if you do the math, I know at one point, this is a few years ago, you had a conversation with Elon, and he told you at the time about the old Roadster that, repairs and stuff like that, it just didn't move the needle a whole lot. And you can kind of use that logic here as well. You're going to have what in effect is almost like a supercar. You're going to sell several thousand of this supercar, but that doesn't even hold a candle to the 1.5 million Cybertrucks that you may be able to get 50 to 60% of the revenue that you're getting for your Roadster out of a single Cybertruck.
And when they start production on this new Tesla Roadster in earnest, you'll begin to see leaks occurring. Like with the Cybertruck, when they bought the Italian Giga presses, you're going to see some clandestine pictures being taken of a vehicle out on a test track with some camouflage wrapping on it. And if you're not seeing that, it's not that the process for developing the car has halted, it's just that it's not on the forefront at this point.
Yeah, and I think that's what's happening as well.
YouTube, Herbert Booter, welcome. He says, morning, guys. Greetings from Düsseldorf. And that is a U with an umlaut at the top. That's why it's Ü. If it was, in the German language, you have to pronounce every letter, consonant and vowel in only one way. And the only time you can deviate is if it has two little dots above it, which is called an umlaut.
Okay.
So there are two ways to say U or Ü. And this is the E version for Düsseldorf, which is a wonderful city in Germany. He says, thanks for changing time so we can participate from Europe more conveniently. Well, thank you for joining us, Herbert.
Thank you very much for joining us.
By the way, Herbert, tomorrow at the Tesla Roadster podcast, or the roundtable as we call it, we have a very special guest that is very important in the Roadster community. He is the godfather of the Open Vehicle Management System, or OVMS. His name is Mark Webb Johnson in China. You probably all know him anyway. But he's going to be joining us and talking about the history of OVMS, what prompted them to develop it, what kind of features it has, what you can do with it, and what happened to the old network that went defunct. So bring your questions. It should be a wonderful session for anyone that owns a Roadster. And, there really is no reason why you should not have an OVMS system in your Roadster if you own one. The biggest advantage is, and believe me, we live in this world, Roadsters get bricked. They usually get bricked not intentionally, but because someone forgot to charge it while the owners were on vacation. With an OVMS system, The instant your Roadster is in trouble, it's going to notify you on your cell phone, so you can make a call to your neighbor, to whoever's watching your car, and say, make sure that circuit breaker gets reset. Make sure that that light is on. Let's get this car charging again.
Yes.
And that $500 or so for that option is money well spent, because you're going to avoid a brick Roadster with it.
Well, and with the Roadsters, we've said this to our customers before. They're not quite like the Model S or the Model 3. They don't have that internal connector that opens up. They have a manual service plug. So,
Right.
you park a Model S in the garage and leave for 3 months, no big deal, because that high voltage connection has been disconnected when the car turns off. Roadster's not that way. You've got 10 days to 2 weeks on the outside before a fully charged Roadster is at 0 miles and it's beeping at you and it bricks.
And it won't charge anymore. Yes, then it has to make a trip to our hospital and get recovered.
Yes, so the OVMS, highly recommend.
Looks like Lightning Rod from Thunder Bay. Welcome, YouTube, Lightning Rod. And then Niles is back with us with the Danish Genome Institute, and he points out that I think Alistair means the spirit of innovation by Rolls-Royce. Very aerodynamic, with a long nose and a front propeller. It's a test plane. Well, Trucker Alistair, if you didn't know that, it looks like we've got a definition for your name as well. Thank you, Niles.
Thank you very much. And that helps me when I go to look up, because I think we're going to have some pretty cool videos to have to watch there. Lightning Rod on YouTube says, I think the Roadster 2.0 has to be the bar raised by everyone else trying to out-halo each other. When the 2.0 comes out, I believe it's GOAT. It's going to be the halo. Yes, I actually agree with you, Lightning Rod. I've heard of the concept of a halo car, which is a car that doesn't exist yet, maybe will exist in the future, probably will exist in the future, but it really is used to help bring a positive attention to an automotive manufacturer. And so far, the Roadster 2.0 has fit the definition of a halo car very well.
And there is one other advantage to this delay, which is that they're finding ways to improve it even further. Do you remember the SpaceX thrusters that they began to talk about?
Oh, yeah.
Which is going to take us down into the 1 second range, pulling G's. So let's see what they can come up with this delay. Instagram 9K2JW Anwar. He says, "Good morning, Mr. Gruber. Say hi to your guest, Anwar from Kuwait. He's been with us before."
Yes, he has. And good morning and welcome. On YouTube, Paul Houlihan tells us, "Thank you for your answer. You were very welcome, Paul." Lightning Rod.
He says, "My umlaut is itchy." TikTok, Brandon, he says, "Your new office looks sick. Budget must be wild." Yeah. For just a quick explanation for those of you that came in later, our backdrop now has been shifting from Pete's personal photography for decades to AI. We're actually learning how to do particular prompts that create these masterpieces. So this one has a futuristic electronic lab look, which is consistent with what we do.
And the fact that TikTok can see it now.
Yeah.
We've had some, thanks to Jesse and the team back there, we've had some really, really wonderful improvements to the TikTok experience, which has allowed us to get back onto Instagram as well.
TikTok, Panopticon says, "How do you know when the coolant needs to be replaced?" There's a color metric that can be applied to that. Generally, in a Tesla, the coolant is not as sensitive to aging as it is in an ICE car. Remember, in an ICE car, you have extreme heat, above the boiling point of water oftentimes. In these EVs, you don't get anywhere near that kind of, degradation. But our yearly preventive maintenance for the EVs does include doing a transmission flush. There is oil in a Tesla Model S and in a Roadster. It doesn't drip, it doesn't leak, and it doesn't come out the exhaust pipe since there is none. But there is some preventive maintenance that you can do, and that's probably a good session for us or something to bring into our podcast as some advice on what the owners can do themselves.
Yeah, I think that is an excellent idea. Trucker Alistair on YouTube he says, thanks. Yes, this is a true test plane, but it was a very good looking plane.
So, you know what? We don't get into news items much because you guys are keeping us so engaged with good questions. But a couple of them here. One of them is that Tesla apparently is now doing extreme weather testing. And the place that they're doing this is, let me see if I can find it again here. It was in Saudi Arabia, and it was one of the deserts there.
I think they were going into United Arab Emirates as well as Saudi Arabia down in the Middle East.
Mm-hmm. There's a picture that we can throw up here, guys, and it's the.
I've actually got the video I'm going to play, so I'll pull that up.
Oh, let's do that.
Oh,
okay.
Fantastic.
And there's a funny story about this. In the early days of Roadster, they probably tried doing extreme temperature testing, but weren't that successful with it, because in Dubai there was a sheik that had a Tesla Roadster, and he was annoyed by the fact that it was going into power limiting mode, often in extreme heat conditions. And Tesla actually sent a couple of engineers out there, one of them being Jameson Cummings, who's been on our podcast actually a couple of times, who was the employee 195, one of the first mechanics and technicians that Tesla hired.
Mm-hmm.
And along with a German engineer in Dubai, they were able to modify the Roadster sufficiently so it wasn't as sensitive to extreme temperatures. The other place you were mentioning that they're doing extreme testing was
Up in Norway.
up in Norway. Okay.
Yeah, it's extreme cold weather testing going on up in Norway. And that makes a ton of sense because Norway is fairly well populated. It has world-leading EV infrastructure. Now, for us in the U.S., to give a little bit of an analog or a little bit of a comparison, United Arab Emirates, the desert in Saudi Arabia, it's not at all unlike the southwestern U.S. desert, especially like the Death Valley, California area. They could do testing in those areas or down along the Colorado River and be very similar as far as the heat signature goes, although it might be a little more dry since UAE is right next to the Persian Gulf. For Norway, Norway's climate is not unlike northern Canada or Alaska.
Mm-hmm.
South central Alaska specifically, and Oslo, for example, is at about the same latitude as the Homer, Alaska, on the end of the Kenai Peninsula. And then as you go around and head north in Norway, that Anchorage to Fairbanks area, climate is pretty similar, as well as the latitude being fairly similar.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So, yeah, it looks like Tesla is taking these cars to some really hostile places regarding temperature. And I guess the temperature in the Saudi desert gets over 120 degrees quite regularly.
Well, Anwar has helped us with this because he's in Kuwait, so he will know. He says, take my advice. The hottest weather in the year, especially, is in Saudi Arabia. It's in July, and the temperatures will reach 55 degrees centigrade, which is about 131 degrees Fahrenheit.
No way. Here in Phoenix, we had 122 years ago, and they shut down Sky Harbor Airport because the instrumentation couldn't read anything higher than that.
That's right. And just a couple years ago, we had 129, I believe, in Death Valley, California. So, yeah, very hot. I don't like it.
YouTube, Trucker Alistair says, yes, Dusseldorf as a British or as a Brit living there 30 years in Aachen. And that's Aachen, and most English-speaking people can't pronounce that properly. It's Aachen. It's sort of a guttural sound,
Yeah, that CH would confuse me every time.
It's the same problem that the Germans have with TH. There are no words in the German language like that because you have to pronounce every single consonant. So TH being a the sound,
Sure,
confuses
sure.
them. They usually substitute it for an S. But anyway, he says, and Dusseldorf has the longest beer counter in the world. Now, that's a place I would like to visit. Sounds like fun.
On YouTube, Addicted, what do you think of the Ghost mod?
Don't know about that.
I'm not familiar with the Ghost mod.
We're going to have to look that one up. Richard, you
Yep.
got an idea?
I do, yeah. So I did a little research when that question came in because I knew we wouldn't have too much on the subject. It looks like it's an upgrade that claims to add 150 horsepower to Tesla Model 3s and Model Ys.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Oh wow, yeah, we're not terribly familiar with the Ghost mod. I think it would be an interesting thing to learn more about. The fact that we haven't seen a lot of Model 3s and Model Ys, we're just not going to have a lot of experience.
And there's a write-up on how does the Ghost mod work. Well, that's going to be something we'll research, and we'll have some opinions at
Absolutely.
the next show. Yeah.
Absolutely. That's a very interesting feature.
Do you know what if you can go back up just a bit there. Yeah, see that cable?
Uh-huh.
That's what we manufacture in our comm group.
Yes, it is.
And just from our experience, there's probably about under $50 worth of product there.
Oh,
It's the magic
I wouldn't be
inside there.
surprised if it's under 25, honestly.
Yeah. And by the way, guys, for those of you, if you're watching Ghost Upgrade, we can manufacture that cable for you, but $2,000 for that. It's I think the rest of the cost is in the magic. That is very cool.
Yeah, it's gonna have to be that they have some sort of computer that goes along with it as well, and not just the cable. That just
Reprogramming maybe or something like that.
there's got to be
some firmware,
something
yeah.
more into it.
Interesting. Well, thank you for enlightening us, Richard. We've got
course.
the yeah. All right. So it looks like Jesse is going to turn on the AC or turn it off at this point. Are we too cold?
I'm going to change the temperature.
Okay.
Okay.
It's dropped to like 10 degrees.
Okay.
For those of you who
No,
don't
no,
know,
he's
in
cold.
this room, it gets hot quick and then cool quick with this AC.
Ah,
Yes,
All right,
it does.
guys.
Yes, it does.
if we can pop the questions back up there, we'll continue with those then. Ghost mod, that's pretty cool stuff. There we go. Instagram, Bruno M. Matos says, "Good afternoon, my friends. Hello from Canada. Welcome and
Welcome.
Thank you for joining us." Yeah.
And then Rafa on Instagram, Rav Wayfar, Nissan that has a test area here in Arizona. That's right. Does Nissan allow Tesla to test at their facility? Good
Not that I
question.
know of. There was a Ford motor or a GM proving ground here in Arizona as well. One of our customers, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they're usually very secretive. A friend of mine, a photographer, used to go up to there and try to take spy pictures of what they were testing. And, you can sell those.
Right.
Yeah. And but yeah, they're very closed. There's a great high degree level of security, so I can't imagine they're sharing and letting other brands in. But it would be nice because those test facilities are large, they're very expensive and expensive to maintain.
Yeah, they do typically sit way out in the desert, the GM proving grounds. Once the city got too close to them, they sold it off.
Oh, really?
And so the GM proving grounds is now an area called Eastmark in Mesa.
Interesting. Yeah. So Facebook, Sinclair Simmons, welcome Sinclair. He says, "I am from Bermuda. You guys mentioned roadsters a lot. I understand how the cells are epoxied in place, and have you looked at getting a manufacturer to build batteries for you that you can offer as an alternative that also have the ability to charge a cell as opposed to taking it out of the mix and just going for the ride? There is definitely money in the batteries for electric vehicles." Well, there are a number of questions there, but let me try to answer them in order here. Yes, we have done an autopsy on the Tesla Roadster cells, and there is no effective, elegant way to remove cells because of the amount of thermal potting compound, which is a very hard epoxy that encapsulates not just the cells, but the cooling jackets that are right next to it. So, for example, people have said, why don't you just drill out the cell, knock it out, replace it? First of all, it's not necessary. When you lose a resistive cell, 1 out of 7,000, the car never realizes one went MIA. So we just simply leave it in place and snip it out of circuit. Have we explored alternatives to recreating these batteries? Now, bear in mind, you have 7,000 18650 cells. So you look at the cost of those cells and multiply that out on a spreadsheet. Then you have dies and molds that you have to create in order to make the clamshells and the bonding plates. Then you have the labor that's involved to mount all of those batteries with an ultrasonic welder, which by itself is a $50,000 to $100,000 piece of equipment. And if you automate it or make it robotic, then it gets into the hundreds of thousands of dollars. For a customer base where there are 2,000 of us left with Tesla Roadsters. The final ingredient here is Tesla charges $30,000 for this replacement battery pack. We've put it in a spreadsheet. There is no way that we can find a way to make this cost effective at $30,000. So we're waiting for Tesla to continue to make them, and if they ever stop, then the cost of the batteries are going to go up, and companies like us will continue to make batteries for the Tesla Roadster.
Well, and I'm looking at just went on here online to Alibaba, and I'm seeing, let's see, wholesale 18650 cells. Now, I'm granted they may or may not be compatible with what would be in the Roadster battery. They're running anywhere from just under $2 a piece to as much as $5 a cell. So if you're going to get a cell, we learned this with the critical power area. If you're going to get a battery, you need to match the manufacturer when possible. In fact, not matching your manufacturer can get you into a lot of trouble because the same battery at the same rating can have a very different discharge cycle on it. So you pretty much have to have the same manufacturer. Who manufactures the 18650 cell for Tesla Roadster?
Well, back in the day, it was Panasonic Sanyo, 2.2 amp hour cells. But the problem is all these manufacturers are improving their product.
Right, because these cells now are anywhere from 2.7 to 3.7 amp hour, and I'm not even sure if Panasonic Sanyo manufactures this type of battery anymore at all.
Well, the other problem with it, Mark, is you now have to, if you have to change electronics, that's a whole new layer of expense.
Right.
Because you have not only the boards that have to be recreated, again, 2,000 customers, but then you have firmware issues. You've got to have people on staff that can, rewrite the firmware to accommodate not only the changes in the cells, but the changes in the boards.
Sure, and I would think all we have to do is take a look at what Tesla did themselves. They had the 3.0 battery pack that went out in 2016. They discontinued after about a year and a half, and then what was it, 3 more years or more before they put out that battery pack again?
The second generation
3.0
battery pack,
3.0.
yeah, which is an 80 kW pack. By the way, the original rating of the Roadster batteries was 53 kW. The upgraded version, which uses 3.2 amp hour cells, was actually 80 kW. And again, there were some changes made to the BMB boards in order to accommodate that cell.
And there are changes to the firmware in the car as well once that battery gets loaded, if I remember right.
Right. Yeah. The firmware had to be updated, and but again, at this point, it's somewhat of a non-issue because Tesla is still making these battery packs. They're continuing to support the Roadster, and it's very difficult for aftermarket to step in and try to compete.
That is that's one of the things we have talked about in the past. Actually, when is the day going to come when battery packs become as interchangeable as car stereos?
Right.
It's gonna need to happen at some point in the future. The highly proprietary technology, where not only is one manufacturer's car not compatible with another manufacturer's car, but one manufacturer's model is not only incompatible with that same manufacturer's model. One manufacturer's model year is not even necessarily compatible inside the model year because you have early year and late year. That standardization is being worked on we're so far away on that.
Well, it's lack of standardization, and which brings me actually to another topic, which is within the next day or two, we're going to be releasing a video on our YouTube channel, and the topic is swappable batteries,
Pete,
battery swaps. Yeah.
real quick before you dive into the swapping, just want to let you know we're at an hour and 5 minutes. I'm going to start letting you guys know when we're at an hour and 15, and then we can take 5 to 15 to wrap up.
Okay.
We've been extending these sessions from 1 hour to a bit more because the engagement is great and we've got a lot of good questions, and your time is our time.
That's right.
So Richard's been working on a great video on the battery swapping, and do you want to tell us a little bit about it?
Well, I have a little bit of an update.
Okay.
Just before I came down here, I went ahead and hit export. So the first final version of it is ready for viewing. So we'll have that done. But yeah, we basically we go into the advantages and disadvantages of battery swapping, who's in that field and who's staying away from it. Yeah, it's an interesting video. It's good content, and I think it's educational too.
It's primarily about Neo, or we go in kind of all different companies, or
We go into a lot of different companies. We go back into the history of it because
The history,
battery
yeah.
swaps started in Israel in 2007, right? I had no idea about that. And they actually sold cars. Renault had sold cars that the purpose was to operate solely based off of the battery swapping. It had charging to augment, but the main selling point was the swappable battery, right? And I had no idea that was around that long ago.
And
Wow.
once you guys watch the video, let us know your thoughts. Is it a good idea? Is it a bad idea? We're on the fence about it. There are some upsides and downsides to this whole program, but without standardization, that's probably the biggest problem. It would be nice if all the manufacturers collaborated and said, all right, we're going to make DC storage systems. We're going to make them in a certain footprint, a certain program signals, a certain voltage even. The voltages are different between Europe and the U.S. And with standardization, you can scale. The prices come down.
Yeah.
And you have interchangeability. There are a whole bunch of advantages. And with battery swapping, like Mark mentioned, you have variations even within the brands. There are 5 different Tesla Model S batteries.
Yeah.
It makes it difficult to do swapping. So the video will be pretty cool. It'll be out, when do you guys think? Exporting now, which means what?
Means it's done. I think we need to review it as a team and then
yeah, we just got to
determine the
review
best
it, make
time.
sure everything's good, and then
Okay.
we'll be in the next day or two.
So maybe by the next podcast, Thursday, we'll be able to announce it and let you guys know. Or you can watch for it on YouTube.
And Pete or Mark, when you guys want to read that bottom TikTok one, we have a shorter attention span on TikTok, so we just want to.
Oh, TikTok. Okay.
Yes, we have another question about any update on the 3 Roadsters found in China.
From QCLX. Yes, the update on the 3 Roadsters. Check out the website. There are additional pictures posted. There are MCOs, pictures of the manufacturer certificate of origins posted. And the highest bid right now is $750,000. We don't know where that's going to end up. Our first choice on this would have been to have Elon bid on these, put one into each of the gigafactories in the front lobby as a part of their early history. And since he just spent $44 billion on Twitter, he may be able to steal these from and go higher than that $750,000 bid that we currently have.
Yeah, it certainly wouldn't be something that would pinch him
Okay.
financially.
Okay. YouTube lightning rod. Here's an interesting factoid, he says. In Canada, Stellantis has stopped construction on a $5 to $8 billion battery plant. Now, we had mentioned that in a previous podcast. I didn't know they had stopped production.
I didn't either.
He says somehow we're not giving them money fast enough. Think Stellantis is a doomed automotive entity and is counting on that money to just survive for the next 2 to 3 years. Should Canada just nationalize this endeavor? Ooh, now we're starting to sound like Cuba. all right, and make our own batteries, and maybe just look for a client rather than subsidizing a car company that has chosen not to move with the times? Would it be better to build a product that is top quality and look for a buyer rather than supporting a client that makes bad choices?
There's a lot of stuff to unpack in that. Of course, first and foremost, Stellantis is the owner of Chrysler here in the United States. So they've made a very public announcements on the recent New York Auto Show about the Dodge Ram Revolution 1500. The Ram Rev 1500, I think is what they call it. And so they are trying to come to the battery game. At the same time, you hear about the cash burn that's going on in the EV industry. That cash burn is not related just to the EV startups. In the first 3 months of this year, Ford lost $2 billion on its EV line.
Amazing.
It's really amazing to see. So at some point, something's got to give.
According to 60 Minutes, a couple of weeks ago, I think it was, Stellantis is also investing in the lithium mine in California.
Oh, that's right.
What's the name of that lake? I had it on the top of my...
It was the Salton Sea.
The Salton Sea, correct, yes. Apparently, there's some thermal activity there. They've been pumping sludge up, collecting enough heat to justify a geothermal plant. And it turns out that this sludge has high concentrations of lithium. So rather than just simply dump it back down into the ground after they're done extracting heat, they're now going to secondarily extract lithium. And Stellantis was a large investor, according to 60 Minutes, in that project. So it looks like we're going to have to unpack a lot of this for the next sessions.
This is another one that Lightning Rod will come back to you with an update when we get going on Thursday. I think that's three updates that we're going to owe people.
Let's see. Instagram, Bruno M. Matos, he says, I wish Gruber Motors would open in Canada. For those of you that have been that are coming in new, we get this question all the time. Where are some other places that you can get your EV fixed other than the manufacturers? We're going to start posting those on our website based on customer testimonials. There's some caveats there. We're not in partnership with these companies, but they're companies that we're made aware of, and we'll be able to extract testimonials and continue to support them on our website if the testimonials are good.
Yes, by all means. And then on Instagram, Rhyme Bull Hobble. Hello, he says.
Welcome.
And one of our own, Doug Platten, is watching as well. And good morning, Doug. Glad that you joined us this morning.
Yeah, Doug. Are you coming in Friday? I've got some work for you.
He also said that we have a great show.
Oh, well, thank you, Doug.
Thank you very much.
So it looks like Tesla's going to be lowering prices at the superchargers in Europe. And the percentage here is 10% to 20%. The only exception is Spain, where prices are being cut by as much as 25%. So Germany, the price has dropped from 52 to 59 cents, or from 52 to 59 cents to 39 to 47 cents per kilowatt hour. So it looks like Tesla is staying with that tradition, or recent tradition, of doing some price cutting.
Yeah, by all means. I think it's going to be good for the customers. Tesla, you would think that they have a captive market, but they don't necessarily, because there is competition out there, both in Europe and here in the States. And if somebody decides that they don't want to pay the extra for the supercharger, they can always go to a non-Tesla charging station. We have here in the United States, Electrify America, for example, and they charge here in Arizona, depending if you're a member or not, you can pay as little as 27 cents a kilowatt hour.
Mm-hmm. We have a picture to throw up here, guys. It's the Spark Charge picture. And it was actually one of our employees that made us aware that one of our customers was asking whether this is a good idea and whether he should buy some of these and get into the mobile charging service. We did a little bit of research. Apparently, this company only leases this method to AAA at this point. And our customer may be, they may be courted by them since they're in the battery business. But the upshot here is when you have an EV and you run out of juice and there are no charging stations near you, you're oftentimes idled. At that point, you have an option, which is called a flatbed tow truck. And if you have spent any time at the Tesla superchargers, it's not uncommon occasionally to see a flatbed tow truck show up with a Tesla on the flatbed, and they either drop it or connect it right there if they can get close enough to charge the car to give them some more range. This is another way to do that. This is actually a DC fast charging method. So what I'm envisioning inside these boxes are batteries. And it allows a charge. And let me give you some statistics here. It will give you 30 miles of range in 30 minutes, helping you to get back on the road or find the nearest supercharger or destination charger. It claims that it has less maintenance. EV charging stations can experience 25% downtime and various issues. This Rody product, made, by the way, by, let me see if I can find that. I'll tell you here in a minute, is free from the grid and free from the constraints of typical EV charging stations.
Well, I think it's by that Spark Charge. If I can see in the image, I think
That
that's
is
what it
it.
says.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's by Spark Charge.
That's the company, Spark Charge. So here is yet another cottage industry that seems to be attempting to make inroads in the EV explosion.
This is very cool tech. It makes me think of some of the more recent car models that have come out that have vehicle-to-vehicle charging capabilities, like the F-150 Lightning or the announced Cybertruck, I believe, has vehicle-to-vehicle capabilities. That's going to be the first Tesla one. Not positive of that yet. Dodge, Stellantis, they've announced that they intend on having that as well. These guys also have, and this is the Rody portable that we saw up on the screen, and they also have the Rody version 3 charger. That Rody version 3 charger can put out 100 kilowatts an hour of charge, which is better than a Gen 1 supercharger.
Amazing.
And in that case, they can charge, it's going to be, they can do about 70 kilowatts of energy total as well off of that particular charger. And it's basically a great big battery pack sitting in the back of a cargo van.
Here's
Cool.
the version 3.
Ah, there we go.
Yeah, there we go.
You know, the picture that we had earlier, you saw handles, and there were 3 of them stacked high, and they showed a young man carrying this over to the car. These things have to be heavy. They have to be very
terribly heavy.
And he probably didn't carry all 3 at once. But a truck-mounted version of this makes much more sense. Of course, the vehicle or the van, AAA van, would now have to get close enough to the disabled vehicle, but that shouldn't be too hard. And I suppose they would even have extension cords for that if they're heavy enough.
Oh, I totally think so as well. I love the tech. I think it's going to be something that will be a niche market, especially right now where as an EV driver, most of us have at least some level of range anxiety. You're always afraid of getting below, 20% or 25% when you could go all the way to 0% in some cases. We had this happen once, by the way, when we were driving our Kia Soul. We went to 0% and then went to 2 dashes. And and my wife called me and said, "I don't know what to do." I said, "Is it still driving?" "Yes." "Well, there's a Fry's a half a mile ahead of you. Go to the Blink charger."
And it worked.
And it worked.
It worked, okay.
We were very lucky. She and family members went to the Blink charger, plugged it in, went over to the Starbucks and had a cup of coffee, and came back and had 15 miles on it.
Now, the same, I have to mention this, is not true with an ICE vehicle because I remember my wife calling me one morning and saying, I'm in the van, I'm on my way to work, and the oil light is on. What should I do? And I said, you pull over immediately. But I'm in traffic. I said, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
That engine is about to seize. You need to get over in the right lane and stop driving the car. I was on the phone with a customer. 5 minutes later, I get done. I call her back. She calls me actually, and she says, "You know, I just pulled into the mall and it won't drive anymore."
Oh,
So anyway, we had a seized engine.
yeah.
So you can do that with an EV, but you can't do it with an ICE vehicle. When the oil
Definitely
light
not.
comes on, you have to pull over. So it looks like TikTok, Carlos Gino, he says, thanks, guys. And then we've got a YouTube visitor, Michael Aldea. Michael is a Tesla, ex-Tesla, or maybe even current at this point. Welcome back, Michael. He says, I think fast charging is just going to get faster and will make swapping batteries from an ownership standpoint unnecessary.
I couldn't agree with you more, Michael. You know, right now we already have 350 kilowatt charging. That's kind of the third generation of charging. For the fourth generation is going to be up around 600 kilowatts at 800 volts. Why would you want to swap a battery when you know that you can get your battery from 20 to 80% in like 7 minutes?
I agree. And Michael, by the way, thank you. I got a hold of Yehu this morning. He had recommended a podcast guest. That
Oh,
would,
yes,
yeah.
yes.
And as soon as I get done with the podcast, we're going to continue the conversation. For any of you that have guests that you feel will contribute to the type of content that we're presenting, have expertise in a certain area, just like Niles did earlier, we would love to insert them in our podcast. And we were kind of joking, eventually we'll become like a Johnny Carson show, where we'll have guests coming through every
That's right.
15 minutes or so. Then we take a commercial break and the next guest comes on, right?
That's exactly right.
All right, guys, just so you know, we're
Yeah.
at 1 hour and 20 minutes.
All right.
Okay.
But thank you, Michael. Appreciate it. YouTube Addicted says, Gruber Motors should open in California. There are more Teslas in this state than any other. I fully agree. There are a lot of Teslas there.
And on Instagram, the Philly Juicer says, always love the show. Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Michael updated us. It is ex-Tesla currently. Michael, Tesla needs you. Actually, Michael was the original Tesla Roadster battery technician. And I pointed this out in the last podcast. They actually showed a picture of an ESS pack, and his name was on the side with a date on it.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's amazing. On Instagram, E Snyder Weiss V7 says, y'all got a Cybertruck reservation.
I do not, and I feel guilty about that because I've regretted it ever since. It was only what, $100 or something
Yeah,
like
it's,
that.
it was something cheap. I do not have a Cybertruck reservation. I likewise missed out.
Yeah.
I missed out on a Lightning reservation. I have put my $100 down for a Dodge Ram Revolution.
Ah, okay.
So it's come mid to late 2024 when they start coming out and we have the opportunity to order. I'll talk with my wife and we may take that opportunity. I like the 500-mile range that they have.
Cool. Yeah, the other guy that regrets it is Sandy Munro, for obvious reasons.
Oh,
They
yes.
want to do a teardown, but he said some of his employees have a reservation, so they may get one before too long once they start being released.
Drive my truck to work, call my wife. Yeah, the truck is in 500 pieces.
Yeah, yeah. Instagram, TGIOVS. He says, hey, from Switzerland. Welcome.
And on Instagram, the Philly Juicer has a question for us. He says, what are your thoughts on the other car companies? I have a Tesla X. For example, what are your thoughts on Lucid?
I like the Lucid. It's definitely the same luxury feel as the Tesla Model S. It has some improvements, enhancements. You know, the coolest part about that car is if you see one on the road, that band of light that crosses the front of that
yeah.
car, it's hard to miss that car if you know what you're looking for. You know?
It absolutely. And because Lucid's here in Arizona, I'm sure that that's why we have some more deliveries here in Arizona for them as well. And they're beautiful cars. I saw one parked at a restaurant and just took the time to look inside. And it's just Such a beautiful, beautiful car.
And if you're supercharging these days, a Lucid may just show up to give you a free ride to let you experience the car.
That's exactly right.
YouTube Lightning Rod says that the battery innovation is now happening so fast in relation to power and charging that it is really hard to predict how far it will go in a 10-year span. Lightning Rod, I'm even looking at the next year or two. The rate of change is exponential. New technologies constantly being introduced, new chemistries, and of course the whole notion of carrying 1,000 pounds of DC storage with you will eventually go away as well. And we're looking forward to that. Photovoltaics, for example.
By all
Getting
means.
enough energy while on the road, which is one of the topics we didn't talk about today. We'll
We'll have to
do it
catch
next
that
time.
one on Thursday. With the energy that's charging inductively or while you're driving.
Or for in two ways, one from the roadbed inductive coupling and from the sun. So we'll probably laugh at having to had carried around 1,200 pounds of DC storage and at some point in the future.
Yes.
I would like to invite, but the questions keep coming in, guys, but we do have to get some closure today. Join us again Thursday because we do this Thursday at 10 o'clock as well. Tomorrow at 10 o'clock, however, we're going to do our Tesla Roadster podcast. And we have a very special guest, one of the godfathers of Roadster technology, aftermarket technology, I should say, Mark Webb Johnson, who's currently living in China, his team developed the Open Vehicle Management System, OVMS, for the Tesla Roadster. Long story short, the Roadsters at one point were able to be connected to a network or polled remotely when the 2G network was active and available in the United States. It's been gone for some time. And the ability for the service centers to remote into your Roadster evaporated with that technology going away. So what Mark and his team developed was a little black box that taps into the VMS in the Roadster, and it allows you, using the current network technologies, 4G and 5G, to reestablish a connection to your car. It is a lifesaver for the Roadster because more Roadsters get bricked with circuit breakers being tripped while on vacation and the charging stops. It's not like the later model Teslas where you can go to 0 miles range and the car continues to function. The Roadster actually reaches a condition called bricking where it can no longer drive, and then it has to go to a shop like ours where we can trickle the voltage back and repair if there is any damage inside the pack with either resistive cells or a brick that is not functioning properly. So Mark will be joining us tomorrow. He's available for question and answer. Any of you curious about what OVMS will do for your Roadster, it's a session that you should be in tune with. And for those of you that can't make it tomorrow at 10 o'clock, all of our sessions, all of our podcasts are posted on our YouTube channel under streams or under live, and you can review it after the fact. So we'd like to invite you. And do we have anything else we want to cover this morning, guys?
I think I'm good for now.
That's it, yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us. And we've had a global audience this morning. It's fun. Any questions that we didn't get to in this session, we will pick up again Thursday. So thank you for joining us.
Take care and have a great day.